Morning. I will now call to order the Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 Town Council meeting. If you would stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Up first on the agenda would be Town Council updates. Are there any updates from councilors? Moving along to the first new business item, item A, consideration of an ordinance establishing council district. This is ordinance 2022-32, and this is the first reading. This is a public hearing. I approve publication, and at this point, I will open the public hearing. Mr. Bosma.
Thank you, Councilor, and members of the Zionsville Town Council. Good to be with you this morning. Brian Bosma with the law firm of Kroger, Gardis, and Regas, 111 Monument Circle in Indianapolis. I'm the chair of the Municipal Practice Group. I'm joined by my colleague today, Doug Kowalski, who was involved in all of your map drawing, and will be, if you meet again and don't adopt this today, he'll be at your next meeting, and I won't be because of a previously scheduled matter. So first, I want to say it's been a pleasure to work with President Plunkett on this, and he's done a great job, I think, on it, very involved in the process. And we'll just walk down memory lane here for a moment for your record. So the council adopted resolution 2022-21, which adopted guidelines and established deadlines for both your own production of a proposed map and for the public production of any maps. Notice was published on November 22nd in the Indianapolis Star and the Lebanon Reporter. Public access packets have been available in your municipal relations coordinator's office since that date. And that notice set deadlines both for any objection to the guidelines, the submittal of any plans, including the plan to be submitted by the redistricting coordinator, which was appointed in the resolution, which was Councilor Plunkett. There were two plans submitted that we call them the Ober plan and the Anderson plan. And we'll come back to those in just a few minutes. So just remind you of the criteria that we're working with in both in the statute and the guidelines. They're really fairly limited in the statute. They just have to be composed of contiguous territory. That's important for one of the plans that we discuss here in a minute, except for territory that is not contiguous to any other part of the town. You have a very unique situation here because you have non-contiguous portions of the town. So that's the first time in my 30 years of working with local municipalities to have to deal with that particular item. But you did it well previously, and I think we've done it well in the plan that's before you. They need to be reasonably compact. They need to contain as nearly as is possible equal population, and they do not cross precinct boundary lines except for two exceptions. One, where councilors live in the same precinct, and the second, if you need to do so to equalize population, which the coordinator's plan does just that. The guidelines set a goal of not more than 5% total deviation, which is the highest deviation from the ideal and the lowest deviation from the ideal. Adding those two percentages gets you to your total deviation. I want to talk for a second about your original maps first. I gave you a black folder which had several items in it, including your original maps. If you take previous maps, if you take a quick look at that, you had a total deviation of 35%. That was District 3 being 15% underpopulated, and District 5 being 20% overpopulated, which made it a bit of a challenge. Obviously, District 5 had to give up a lot, and District 3 had to gain quite a little bit to try to equalize populations. There was a drafting challenge with the three councilors living one precinct apart, and the coordinator's goal of not drawing any councilors together. That wasn't a statutory requirement. It is an allowed consideration under the case law, and what President Plunkett wanted to do. There, as I indicated, the non-contiguity of the town due to Wattstown is a little bit of a challenge. You have some very oddly shaped precincts. And there were some iterations which Councilor Plunkett looked at that just had juts because of unwieldy juts, just because of the places that the precincts are, the way that the precincts are shaped. And you have couple of precincts that have 2,000 in population, which limits keeping precincts together and moving proportionately big portions of population when the ideal district for you all is 61 to 20. So it was pretty clear some surgery was going to be required. The coordinator's proposal I'll mention first, and then I'll talk about the two publicly submitted plans. The coordinator's proposal eliminated the original non-contiguous portion of District 3 by splitting Eagle 20. You really have to do that to make that precinct a separate district, as in your prior maps and as in one of the publicly submitted maps, violates the non-contiguity prohibition. So you have to split that precinct and put it with the district that it's attached to. We additionally split Union 2 to balance District 5 and Eagle 3 to equalize the population in 2 and 5. And there really wasn't any way to do that without making those splits. The result has a total deviation of minus 2.6. That's District 2 with a 1.59% minus deviation, and District 5 with a 1.05 plus deviation. And those counselors intending to run again are each in their own districts, not coupled together. District 1 is open with Councilor Traylor's indication that he is not seeking re-election. The two plans that were submitted were well thought out. We've looked at a lot of public plans. A lot of them have been just absolutely ridiculous. These were well thought out, well put together. We believe they're not as good as the redistricting coordinator's plan, but each of them is, it's about valid plan. So I'll talk about the Ober proposal first. First of all, you have former Representative David Ober, is the guy with the smile on his face right now, is here in the audience. We appreciated receiving that. I hadn't had contact with David for a little while, other than running into him on a circle one day. So it was good to re-engage with David. His submittal, which I have in the right-hand pocket, if you haven't already pulled it out, there's one that's marked the Ober plan and one marked the Anderson plan. His proposal had an 8.67% total deviation, with District 1 being plus 4.17, District 3 being minus 4.5. His plan did place Councilors Culp and Melton together in District 3, totally legal, totally allowable. Kind of tough to pick up votes for those kind of things sometimes, but certainly you're allowed to do that. Councilor Plunkett determined he would not do that if possible. The Ober plan has no splits and kept Eagle 20 together. The southern portion of two non-contiguous really is not valid under the non-contiguity prohibition. Very understandable that the challenge, and you did, and the guidelines say that it's possible to keep precincts together, and that's what was the case in both plans that were submitted. The second plan is also in your packet. It's called the Anderson proposal. It's submitted right before the noon deadline on December 1. It has a 10.88% total deviation, with District 3 being minus 3.67% and District 2 being plus 7.21%. This one places Councilors Plunkett and Melton in the same district, with two open districts, 1 and 2. Again, the public plans were well thought out. They have greater total deviation than the plan submitted by Councilor Plunkett, and because they did not split precincts, which Councilor Plunkett's plan did. So that's really the explanation I have for the three plans. A word on the effective date. This has come up in a number of places that we've worked with. So the effective date is immediately upon passage. The ordinance clearly says it's effective for the 2023 election, and you continue to represent the district you were elected in until the new councilors are elected. This is not a challenge for you all. It is a challenge some places where a town has decided to have staggered elections, electing 2 one year, 3 the next, or whatever their number is. Then you literally have people who continue to represent the old district while new councilors elected represent a new district, and it causes confusion. But that is not the case for you. You each will remain the representative of your current district, and it will be those who are elected in the 2023 election that will be elected to the new districts. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the plans or the process. Councilor Plunkett, can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Normally, when you split precincts, you cannot adopt an ordinance in one night because you have to give 10-day notice to the county clerk. We confirmed that that applies to cities only. It does not apply to towns. So if you desired to do so, you would be within your legal rights to adopt the resolution on final passage tonight. I'm not encouraging it. I'm just giving you your options as no notice is required under this plan.
So were there two of these that did split precincts? Is that correct?
No, the other plans did not, the Ober and Anderson plans did not split precincts. The Plunkett plan, risk redistricting coordinators
That's the one that
plan
did.
is the only one that split precincts. And honestly, we aren't very comfortable if the total deviation is above 5. There's some support that 10% is a rule, and I think we talked about this before. That's really a evidentiary rule that says if it's just under 10%, the burden of proof is on somebody else other than the drawers of the map. That there's a possibility of having a more equal map, but
that's irrelevant because they're all less than 6, right? Or
No,
eight, one's 8. One's
Anderson was 10 point.
Anderson was 10. Okay.
Yeah, 10.88. It was almost 11. The Ober plan was 8.67, and your plan was 2.6.
A little over 2%.
Yeah, 2.6. Which is we're really comfortable with that. We're comfortable if it's below 5.
Ryan, which precincts were the ones that were split? Union 2, did you say?
Let's see. It's Eagle 20, and that's the split between.
It's right next to the soccer fields.
Yeah, district.
Where's the other part?
And district 3. Yeah, Vanna, would you show this?
Eagle 20 is right here.
So that really required a split to keep this portion, this little blue line here is part of 20.
Oh, I see.
Oddly shaped. So if you look at the Ober plan, you'll see where it was not split. You see exactly where it was.
Yeah. It's
And that was split, Brian, to maintain the continuity of the
Contiguity. Yes,
of
yeah.
the
You
district.
really have to. I'd be uncomfortable not doing that.
well, it's almost split anyway, just by the nature
right.
of work, right?
Yeah.
That's right. And again, you've got a little, I don't want to say odd, just a challenging situation here because your town's not contiguous. And a significant portion of the town is not contiguous. And then Union 2 was split up here, and that picked up 300 people, and it just was to balance the population. We were well above 5% without that change. And then the final split was Eagle 3 right here, with a portion being in 5 and a portion being in 2. And again, because of the challenge was because of your original maps and the growth within the town, and making 3 so underpopulated and 5 so overpopulated. There just had to be a shift, and there were only so many places you could go without drawing councilors together. And again, back to the odd shapes. If you look at this, I think this shape right here is a little odd. That's in District 4. That's the precinct shape. The precinct shape has tines that go down, pick up neighborhoods, and back up. And it's been our experience that if you split precincts like this for a municipality, after the next municipal election, first of all, the electoral hassles are virtually eliminated by the vote centers. The county clerk will still have to individually divide in a split precinct, assign people to a district. They just call it a project. I haven't had any county clerk, throw up hissy as they did 10 years ago when we split precincts, because that meant paper ballots at those precincts. That's not the case now. And it's been my experience that if you split precincts, your county commissioners after the next municipal election will take a look and say, okay, we got to true this up, and they'll change some of the precinct boundaries to take care of that.
Any questions from counselors?
I just want to point out on the Ober plan that, again, I really appreciate your submission and I really like it. It's more concise, it's clean. I think the public can understand it. It doesn't have the tines. One big flaw I will say is that, even though it follows precincts on District 2, it separates my neighborhood, which is Royal Run, inside and outside. And I think that's a big problem just from a standpoint of representation for a neighborhood. Even though it's a large neighborhood, I think if there's major changes in that area, I think it would be important to have the same representative. But I really appreciate the submission. I really like it better than the town council map that's being presented now. But that's really just a symmetry kind of thing and just for an understandability for residents. But overall, I do like it. I wish it was a little closer on the delta of difference. But thank you for submitting that. And I just want to call that out as a big thing that I am concerned about is splitting an actual neighborhood that is, and it makes it non-contiguous too with District 2 there as well. Just not on the map here, but thank you.
Yeah, I liked it too. I think he was probably really trying not to split precincts. And so he's going to get a deviation that's just much higher than we would like to see.
Yeah, and we might have had some cleaner lines in those same areas
Right.
with the over plan if there was not a charge from the redistricting coordinator to maintain counselors in a separate district.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you can see on both of them. I mean, everything kind of moves to the east, which is what,
Mhm.
you had mentioned in the last meeting, that the only way to gain population is to move everything over to the east and maybe a little bit north. I do think that, to Councilor Melton's point, I would agree with his comments on Mr. Ober's plan. And, you can see on Mr. Anderson's plan, same thing, kind of moving everything to the east there. I did have, and I can tell you part of the, I had a lot of people in the last election cycle when we were campaigning ask me how these districts came to be, right? I mean, specifically in my district, it would come down and pinch there at Eagle 1 and Eagle 9, and then we would pick up Eagle 1 and 15. And it was kind of a weird deal. Everybody had a lot of questions about it. And while I'm certainly going to miss campaigning in those areas, I think the general feel is the most significant intent and reality of this map is to get that deviation as low as possible and give everybody the most accurate and appropriate representation. So yeah. Are there any other questions for Mr. Bosma?
Thank you.
Thank you. As I said before, this is a public hearing. If there's any member from the public who would like to come up and speak, we're certainly open to do that. If you would just state your name and your address, and you'll be on the clock for 3 minutes.
3 minutes of public hearing.
Andy Pical, Zionsville. There's only 3 minutes in a public hearing. Is
Yes.
that right?
And Andy, what's your address?
707 North Elm Lane. I'm just trying to figure out how we spent $60,000 on this. We put a map together for about $2,000. And I'm wondering how you guys spent $60,000 on this.
Is that your only question? I'm sorry, is that the question?
Splitting precincts as well. I understand the deviation is important. You stayed you were at 8. Splitting the precincts, especially moving your precinct from the western edge of town all the way to downtown Zionsville. Does that make geographic sense to you?
The districts are all contiguous, and the intent was to get
Sure.
the lowest deviation. And the reason
And not split.
and the reason we're spending $60,000 on this map is because the mayor recommended we use Mr. Bosma.
So you didn't research any of your own?
We didn't. We used the mayor's recommendation.
Okay.
Are there any other members from the public?
Candace Ulmer, 1880 South, 950 East in Zionsville. I'm District 1, Union 2, and I was former Union Township trustee, and then in 2008, when we did reorganization, went on the town council. I liked Mr. Ober's maps because of the one thing that is really contiguous is the rural district all the way up here, because the backside of Zionsville and over to Perry is pretty much the rural district. And I thought bringing in Worth with Union was an excellent recommendation. I understand all the other issues, but I just wanted to see, I thought possibly we had 2 rural districts, actual rural representations. If we had District 1 and District 3, that's wishful thinking, I know that, but I would just hope we can do anything to get good rural representation from the people, their availability, who lives in the rural area to represent their area. I commend Councillor Plunkett and the other 2 private citizens, or John Q. Public. I came into the party late, went to that website and was totally lost on how to get things together. So I commend you on what you did. And I also want to really take this time to thank all of you that do represent the rural district. You have done well and have done well for them, but I would really like to see them be able to have somebody who lives in their area represent them from their area and be a true rural district. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Heather Lusk, 285 West Hawthorne Street. I'm president of the VRA, and the village has been split, well, since David Brown was a town council member. And I'll tell you, with splitting the neighborhoods, and these subdivisions and different area groups of people, it does confuse folks, just FYI. As president, we've tried, and we've worked really, really well this year for the first time with 2 council representatives, with both Joe and Josh. Josh has been a fabulous representative since he was elected. Joe, when he jumped in the seat, we finally had a second representative helping us, but it still is confusing for people moving into the neighborhood saying, wait, where do you live? I can't remember. Is it north of 5th or 6th, or where's the dividing line? So just for reference, it gets real confusing because a lot of these, I've noticed a lot of subdivisions are split here too. FYI. For what
So I have a comment on that. So
yeah,
can I comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my eyes, if you have 2 representatives and you have 2 votes on the council, isn't that a benefit to your, to your argument?
it goes both ways. It depends on the representative.
Which side you're on?
We've had great representation with Joe. Prior to that, since I lived here, I don't know prior to 2010, but prior to that, there was only one person who really actually met with village residents and cared. I don't know if that would be the case in other neighborhoods, but I absolutely understand your point, and I think that.
Yeah. So when I ran against Tom Schuler, I ran because Tom Schuler, I felt, wasn't representing our rural area. And though I live in Royal Run, yes, it's rural. It's a lot of homes in an area, but it's designated rural. And the issue that we were having is we're being provided services by the Boone County, not by the town of Zionsville. And that was different for him. So I guess what I'm pointing out to you in your situation is when you have those 2 elected officials, I feel like you have a bigger axe than, for example, my district right now is, if we go with this, the plan here, I've got very rural all the way to my residential densification, Royal Run, and all the way to Hunt Club Road, which is high value, low impact properties of, multi-million-dollar estates. So I guess my point is it's not going to be easy no matter what we decide to do, but to have 2 groups or 2 counselors in the downtown Zionsville, I think is really important, and it's a strong thing. But I also don't live down there, and I appreciate your comments. And I hope that you continue to get represented properly by whichever map we choose.
Thanks. I definitely agree with that perspective, if it works out that way, it's an ideal situation. It doesn't always happen. Thanks.
Thank you. I mean, there are also, just to, as you look at these precincts in the village or that represents that village area, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 different precincts. I mean, that's part of the difficulty associated with drawing the map is if you want to try where possible, where you can, when possible, to not, split up those those precincts. And so any other comments from the public? Any other questions or comments from counselors?
I do have a quick question, and it may be for our council, Heather, or if maybe better answered by Mr. Bosma. But as far as I see the objectives of keeping the populations of each district close and also keeping them contiguous, is there a ranking of what's more important? Is it more important to have each district in parity, or is it more important to keep it contiguous?
So if I can address that, Mr. President, I want to address one other thing too. The map is only the end point of the project, right? There was a process put into place that had to be put together. Someone has to do it with the knowledge of the questions that you've just asked, because these are important answers to defend your map if it should ever be challenged in the future. The single most important factor is population equality. That is the first thing that case law around the country, including in Indiana, will address when it looks at the propriety of a map, and then meeting the statutory, right behind that, maybe co-equal with that, is meeting the other statutory criteria, most of which are pretty easy. Non-contiguous, non-contiguity being one of those. But undoubtedly, from the United States Supreme Court to our state Supreme Court, population equality is the most important factor. That's why we set a reasonably low guideline of 5%. We're comfortable under 5%. We get less comfortable above 5%. And we'd be very uncomfortable with 10.88%.
Thank you.
Any other questions, counselors? Or from the public? At this point, I'll close the public hearing. At this point, I would make a motion to introduce ordinance 2022-32. The question I would have, Brian, is would I then say which map that we feel like we want, or?
You have an ordinance before you that's been drafted that presumes the adoption of your map. If you desired to adopt a different program, you would amend the the ordinance to change the legal descriptions in there to one of the other plans.
Okay.
So the ordinance should move forward regardless of which map you would select, if that makes sense.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from counselors about I guess we could have dialogue about the different maps now.
I guess my only comment is, thinking of these 3 maps, I appreciate the 2 maps that were created. I don't know the process behind the other 2, and I know the process.
Can I just pause 1 second?
Yeah.
So before you give comment, I think Councilor Plunkett, you moved a motion for introduction. Did you get a second?
No. Should I withdraw that?
No, I think you could probably just ask for a second and then ask for discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Vice
Sorry.
President Burke.
Sorry.
So I guess I know the process behind what we're calling the Plunkett map, right? My only fear with the other 2 maps is not knowing the process or the thoughts behind them. It's hard to sort of gauge, all the details behind the scenes, right? And so that's why I like the Ober plan. The Anderson plan it's the population's too wildly divergent. It's 10% between 2 districts, it seems like. But I think the Plunkett plan seems, I don't have any concerns. I do appreciate Ms. Lusk's comments on the splitting of the village. I know that's sort of been an unknown. I appreciate her comments on Councilor Culp and I, but I do, if it works, I do tend to agree with what Councilor Melton was saying in terms of having 4 representatives for the village, which is so important to the town from aesthetics and kind of the hub. If you've got 2 engaged counselors and you have 2 at-large counselors that are engaged, you've got basically the majority of the council. And I know the VRA has done a good job of getting people to vote. So as candidates are filing for these districts, hopefully it's important to them to be engaged with that group too. So
Councilor Garrett or President Plunkett, you know, we have, I think we have one of the presenters here, or I'm sorry, one of the people that presented one of these. Would you be willing to tell us about your process?
I think he indicated he didn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason, to be clear, the reason we didn't have him present was because the indication was that there was not a desire to present. So, and that's,
It's your show. If
no, I have no problem with it.
I guess the question was about the process that Councilor Garrett kind of brought up. So I was just curious. We know this process. We paid for this process. I sat in a mayor administration meeting where the mayor made this recommendation for Mr. Bosma's company. So I was just curious. You submitted, you're here. I don't believe the other person is here. I like yours. What was the process? Can you tell me a little bit about the process since we don't know that?
The resolution that you adopted setting out the guidelines for how maps are drawn was my starting point. I adhered pretty closely to the preference to not split precincts, which is what Mr. Bosma pointed out in my draft, was less desirable. A first couple of iterations of the plan that I put together actually did split precincts and grabbed census blocks that would balance population a bit more effectively, like this map here. So I think that I enjoy your conversation. If I were going to hire somebody to do a map, having worked with Mr. Bosma, he'd be the person that I would hire. He's been through a statewide process multiple times. I've been in the past a beneficiary of that through redistricting at the state level. This map doesn't give me any pause whatsoever. I think that balancing the population, as he suggested, is the right way to do it. But as far as process, it all started with the resolution that you adopted. I adhered pretty strictly to the rule about not splitting precincts, which is why my map doesn't look like this one.
Thank you for your comments.
Is the other author here?
No, you can't.
No, he's the one that submitted it. He's the one that needs to speak about it. We got an email last night stating that he couldn't make it. Any other questions or comments? I would make a motion to introduce ordinance 2022-32 on first reading. Oh, I already did that. I'm sorry. I guess I need to take a vote. So a motion to introduce ordinance 2022 on first reading with a second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed.
We are sort of running out of time. I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can get this done today, if possible.
I'll second that. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed, which would then, I'll make a motion to introduce 2022-32 on final reading. Second by Councilor Garrett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Should there be a discussion, open for discussion?
Yeah, sure. Certainly have to do that. Any questions or discussion?
Just to follow procedures.
Yeah. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is other matters. Are there any other matters from councilors? I would go ahead.
I just want to thank you for your work on this. Appreciate you putting so much time and effort into it and getting us through to the end finish line here.
Sure.
Thank you.
And my assumption, I want to be clear on the next step. So the next step is it goes to the mayor's desk. She has 10 days to either sign it, veto it, or if she doesn't sign it, it's adopted, correct?
Correct, right. And that was one of the reasons I think that we felt like we were running out of time, because we do need that 10-day window, because we have to complete this process by the end of the year.
Right.
So that would put her action from today, I think would be December 18th, which would allow one more meeting on your agenda if necessary on the 19th. So that's part of the process that we wanted to adhere to if we could.
And I'm assuming there won't be a veto or an objection, just based on the fact that she didn't lobby for any particular map nor speak against any map. So I think we should be okay, but I just wanted to make sure I understood the rest.
Well, I'd be surprised too, because she spoke about doing this process twice when she was giving us updates here in these meetings.
Yeah.
And we used her recommended consultant for that. And I think they did a great job. So,
Yeah, thank you to all involved.
Yeah, also to the folks, as we mentioned before, the two folks that submitted the maps, that's certainly a difficult process, and appreciate those maps. And, there were we had 2 or 3 folks come pick up packets, a couple folks ask for some additional information. So, I appreciate the engagement from the town for sure. Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Counselor Trailer. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 8 a.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law. Thank you.